Test 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's test hello radio. Okay, we got that. Okay. Let's see about this here.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Blender Report, where news meets rational thinking. I'm your host, Jonathan Harvey, and this is your co-host, Liam DeBoer.
Okay, that sounds good there. Okay. Okay. We're going to do something different tonight. I found these guys on X, and it's very, very interesting. They're interviewing Luc Sabourin, who was a former Canada Border Service agent. So, explaining the corruption in the CBSA. So, this is what he's got to say here. He's revealed that there's over 300,000 travel documents, including 283,000 blank passports, have been stolen and exploited by transnational crime networks. So I'm going to get it started here, and we'll get going here.
And today we are having a conversation with Luc Sabourin. Luc Sabourin is a former officer with the Canada Border Services Agency, or the CBSA, who has come forward as a whistleblower to expose systemic failures and massive corruption within the agency. His warnings include the theft of hundreds of thousands of travel documents, lapses that compromise national security, and the approval of Canadian travel documents for individuals on terror watch lists. Sabourin's insights shed light on how mismanagement and criminal networks exploit these weaknesses, sparking urgent calls for accountability and reform. Luc, thank you for being here today. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
All right, so before we really get into it, can you please give our audience some clarity on your role with the CBSA, the time you spent working there, and the work you were doing when you started to uncover these massive problems?
I joined CBSA from National Defense Intelligence around the time the events of September 11, the terrorist attack that occurred. I was offered a deployment with, at the time, was Immigration Canada Enforcement Unit at the Organized Crime Division. What occurred was a unification, amalgamation of CBSA, Custom and Immigration, and Immigration Enforcement. Just like they did in the States with Homeland Security, they merged everybody. From there, I made my way through various assignments as a developmental officer, and I mostly work in operational environment and enforcement. My work took me, my substantive position was at the National Document Fraudulence Center, where I was in charge of myself and Mr. Steiner worked under me. We were the only two operators of the Lost Stolen Fraudulent Database. That is a system that for CBSA, that we issue alerts worldwide for every law enforcement agency on travel documents that give access to Canada that are either reported, access to Canada and other country that are either reported lost or stolen. It enables law enforcement agencies and border officers to detect when somebody's trying to land or enter a country with that document. It prevents people from either accessing a country or boarding a plane with an intended goal. And I worked in on a secure floor, and inside that secure floor is another secure area with a vault door, and only a certain amount of people are allowed in there.
Well, in one of the things that you've uncovered, which you pointed out in a sworn statement, was the theft of over 400,000 travel documents, including more than 283,000 blank passports ready for personalization. So in your estimate, what was the motive behind that theft, and how are the documents being used? Also, how did you feel the CBSA reacted to this catastrophic theft?
What was believed at the time is that it's not limited to just the facilitation of somebody to travel and organized crime to make money. I think there's a bigger goal and objective at place, probably to the benefit of somebody that has a bigger objective. We were a transitory place for them. That's all we are.
some of these you could presume are being used by just people who simply want to come into Canada and land here. But then another issue that we've seen as of recent is the increased number of people on terrorist watch lists being captured at the northern U.S. border, so the Canada-U.S. border. So would it be safe to assume that whether it's a small portion of these or even maybe a substantial portion of these land in Canada, but then with our documentation, but then illegally cross into America from there? Would that be a safe assumption?
Yes, yes. And there's no doubt in my mind that that large theft was much more complex and had a bigger objective than just facilitating people here. There was an opportunity for many things with those thefts. As I testified in my affidavit, I think that it was an opportunity to move a certain group of people here. And there's no doubt in my mind that some of these people probably ended up on the watch list. The 7 people I flagged during my, as a case officer, screening individuals requiring visa to come here, I identified at least 7 people. 6 were high risk, and 1 was a confirmed individual on a wanted list. I was brought in the office, and the culture was that they wanted to do more cases to clear them than actually giving the time to investigate them. And that was a big problem for me. And they said to me, well, we have people doing 50 cases a day. And I said, well, the problem I have with how you're operating right now, and this is coming from a junior officer, and they were not happy with that. Now, I don't feel that I'm better than anybody else. I just have, I was trained, I was brought in because of my experience on a lot of things. And what I said to them, I said, well, are they really doing those 50 cases a day properly? Are they really screening the people, or are they just meeting their quotas to keep their job? And I said, with that in mind, they're probably cutting corners on search. And I said, I did 30 cases today. Out of those 30, I said I found 7 people that were high risk. And they said to me, well, there's not enough information. And I said, well, there is actually. And I said, what strikes me is that also the information that I found all points in one direction for the same 7 people, the one that cleared them. And they said to me, well, no, there's not enough evidence, so no reportable trace. So what I did is I was directed to put no reportable trace, so I had to put no reportable trace. This is a management directive. This is not me, okay? So what I did is I made a copy of that for the simple reason that if these individuals that are here, one of them was actually in Ottawa. So there's the one that was on the terror watch list was actually in Ottawa. And I had an argument with the manager in that unit that day for that. And they reminded me that I was just on assignment. And subsequently, they gave me another case, which was I think a trap. And the management issued a directive to have me return to my substantive unit, and the document was released to me, and it was the director himself saying that you need to craft a story to get rid of Luc Sabourin. And at the same time, another manager wanted to hire me within that unit to keep me there, and that same director gave a directive in writing, a document that I have obtained under access to information. He gives in writing that no, he needs to go back. And everything relates to the fact that I was questioning their method and practice and their screening process that were being expedited because they wanted to clear the amount of case number, which I think is very wrong. Because look at where we are.
We recently saw with guys like the LDD case, who was a filmed, say, dismembering a victim on camera for ISIS, being granted Canadian citizenship. do you think it's those kind of protocols in that focus on just getting the approvals done that is leading to those scenarios?
That too, yes.
Sir,
yes.
I just want to circle back to something that you were saying about the 400,000 travel documents that we were talking about that basically we know went missing and a lot of them were blank. How did the CBSA react when you brought this up and when you were highlighting these things? Like how was this managed internally when you brought this massive, significant theft to their attention?
For me and Mr. Steiner, this was a matter of emergency. And our response and our request to management was for them just another day in the office. In addition to that, we were already on bad terms with them, so they kept giving us other work that should have been given to clerical staff, and that is why I say that I question their integrity. They never treated this at no point in time was this urgent. I never received any email from the management to indicate to me that they sent an alarm email, an urgent email to the ports of entry letting them know. They never provided additional resource, and we asked the management to stop giving us other work that could have been done by the critical staff, but there was an intended goal. The management, first of all, wanted to get rid of me and Mr. Steiner because we had exposed the destruction of foreign passport and the request to create false document in a federal database to mislead our allies and everybody else. On top of that, they made sure that we had no support, point blank, and I was very concerned with that. And I brought it up. It led. I apologize for my French English. It led to some verbal exchange with some of high-ranking people with me, where I basically told them that this was pure negligence, and they brought that up to the high director, and the focus was not, and I repeat for the viewers, the focus was not on the passport that were probably en route here. The focus was on the fact that a junior officer was standing up to senior officers, telling them that they were not treating this with urgency.
Can you touched on something there. Can you dig in a little more for the audience about what happened with the CBSA when you were talking about documents that got torched? What happened there? You're saying the incident that led up to you kind of butting heads with the organization.
In addition to the lost, stolen, fraudulent document that we enter in the database, we have a group of people inside our unit that are specialized in verifying the authenticity of a document when it's seized by either border officers, police officers, and during a course of investigation. And what these specialized individuals do is they go through, they do like an autopsy of the passport. They have all these special tools, they have these knowledge. So, and we either retain these passports in our vault, in a very large, thousands and thousands of drawers of cabinets with reference number, and they will do an analysis of the case, and if they have to testify in court, the documents are in there. It's also the last known pictures of the individuals that are either here under detention, getting ready to be removed, or that we lost track of because they used the passport with their pictures in it, but they put false information, and once they got here, adios, and we don't know where they are. So it's the last known pictures. We never destroy, once a passport has been analyzed and found to be legitimate, we don't give it back to the person if we don't know where the person is. We either send it back to the embassy, the originating embassy that has issued the passport, because it belongs to them.
Now listen to this part. Listen carefully what he's talking about here.
This is law.
Right. So if it does prove to be an original, you send it back to the corresponding embassy.
Yes, we send it back if there's no enforcement action on it. And I'm trying to not to talk when I'm in my world, but trying to tell your public so they understand.
Yeah.
So what happens is we've been doing this forever, and the legal office of CBSA, their lawyers, came down to us because I guess there was an incident that we were not made aware of where a passport was destroyed, and it didn't belong to the Canadian government. Any passport that is Canadian is sent back. Once we assess we don't need it, it's sent back to Passport Canada. Anything that is foreign is sent back to the respective embassy that issued it, in groups, after we accumulated a certain amount to save costs. A recently deployed former intelligence officer to our unit that is not a supervisor, but is a senior officer, comes over to Mr. Steiner and says, I've got about 6 boxes right there of large quantity of passports. I want you to rip the content, shred it, and go into the secure tracking database and indicate that you've returned it to the embassy. Mr. Steiner himself is a former military person with an outstanding career, and he's not one to follow orders that are criminal or anything. And the order coming from this woman that came to our unit under questionable circumstances, basically we found out that it was a problem that was transferred from another unit to our unit. So I think everybody can understand what I'm saying. So that person gave him that specific order. He refused. So she came to me. She indicated the same thing. And I told her this was illegal. I wasn't comfortable with it. And she said to me, those are her words. And everything I say to you and your viewers comes with supporting documentation and an affidavit to the members of parliament. So she said to me, if you're not comfortable with doing that, then give it to the student. And she's already doing it. I said, no, you're not going to give it to the student. I said, this is criminal. And I said, you're misleading our allies. And this is the last known pictures of these individuals. I said, why are you doing that? So she went to management. Management brought me in office. And again, there was a verbal exchange. And they said to me, we're doing this for this reason. I said, well, that's not true, because I just verified the reason you're telling me. And the reason you're telling me is not true. So they said, well, we'll take care of it. And they were upset with me. I walked into the room. The student had already destroyed a large amount of passport, and she had already inserted in the secure database that she had returned it to the embassies. So I confronted her. She was not happy. And I decided to take a camera and take pictures and secure evidence, because this was very serious. Some of the people that I verified that she had already destroyed the passport and entered that she had returned it to the embassy were individuals that were wanted. They were serious criminal, people that were no longer admissible to this country. And they said they would stop, and they started packing all the passports in large envelopes to address it at a later date. And only to find out that the student was in another room with the shredder continuing to shred. So I walked in there with the camera and I took pictures of everything she was doing, and I turned it over to Parliament. The female officer that gave the directive, her husband became somebody very important in the office of the president of the agency. And he had another director working for him, and that director is the director that was putting so much pressure on me and Mr. Steiner. He got rid of Mr. Steiner and then got rid of me. This is very wrong. And when I sent my information, if we're going to go there, let's go there. So when I sent my evidence and my case and my complaint to the Minister of Public Safety and to Justin Trudeau, begging for their help, advising them that there was a serious issue inside the CBSA, in addition to other things that I had witnessed, that I had reported, because what they did is my evidence was sent to Ralph Goodale. Ralph Goodale sent it back to CBSA, the Office of the President, who works there. The person, the high-ranking person, that his wife, her name is in my complaint. And everything went downhill from there. And this was just part of what I reported, because, so your viewers know, in 2006, I reported some very, very serious events that were occurring in my unit to management. And then I used the Harper government internal disclosure system that's supposed to protect me. And when I brought it to their attention, to the internal disclosure director, in a private meeting, before I even stepped foot back in my office, the people I pointed my finger at that I believe were involved in organized crime, they greeted me when I got in there, and it got really ugly. And there's no doubt in my mind that those people are the people that gave my personal address to the member of organized crime, the Mexican cartel that I interfered with in 2007, that I took part in an operation with the police, that we arrested that guy. And there's no doubt. And I will tell this for your viewer, because we're there. Let's go there. 6 people from the CBSA president's office all the way to my office retired within a series of a few months after I testified in Parliament. And everything I reported was in the hands of Greg Fergus in 2016. And he never did nothing. They abandoned me. And another member of the political party was also aware of this, and they did nothing. Only the Bloc Québécois picked it up, and they acted on it.
So one of the things that you've kind of pointed out here is that, yes, throughout all of this, anytime you raised flags about things that were happening, it was just shut down, and then you also faced obstacles being put in front of you. Now, there's a couple different reasons for this. And maybe we're into the realm of speculation here, so if you don't want to go down that route, just feel free. But it could be simply that this is a lot of negligence and incompetence causing these problems, and it would be easier for those problems just to be ignored or pretend like they don't exist, so that they don't have to face accountability for essentially things slipping through the cracks, right? Then there's another aspect, which could be that certain people within high positions of power in these institutions, such as the CBSA, are actively involved in some of these issues that are happening, and therefore that's the reason that they'd want to put obstacles from, say, any further investigations on the matters. So in your estimation, I guess, do you think the problem here is incompetence or corruption?
Corruption. I believe that the initial complaint that I did, the person that I was pointing my finger towards when I talked to management and the people of internal disclosure process, I basically reported criminal acts that were very serious, not just based on my assessment. They were clearly wrong, and they had impact at every level. What I believe is that the director that I reported it, I believe that the person that I was pointing my finger at probably had something on that director and was using it as a get out of jail free card, because 4 other managers under that director quit their job after they had the problem with the same person I was pointing my finger at. And things continued to escalate. And when I met with the Office of Internal Disclosure, I can tell that the director was, when I started mentioning name, she was very, very uncomfortable, to a point where she backed up in her chair, and the tone of the air in that room changed, and the conversation didn't last long, and she thanked me and she said she would look into it. That was it was a turning point when I started mentioning names. The more I started noticing things and keeping track of things that I had no choice to keep track of, because I was directly involved in them, because I handled those documents and I saw how a document came in and how a document left, and the impact it has on people, and how the impact it could have on the court and the justice system. I had a duty to report it. This was not me playing investigator. This was me doing my job, and me, at one point or another, being either called in court and say, when this passport came in, it had 25 pages. When it left, it was missing 5 pages. Key pages, and I'm just using this as an example. but it was missing key pages that were supposed to be investigated that could have prevented this person from remaining in Canada. This person being already involved in organized crime. So was somebody asking them to remove those pages so there's no case to be made against that person?
That's what it seems like. I mean, so, and in trying to unpack just how corrupt maybe the top level of the CBSA is and how it trickles down into your position and several others, do you believe that your case or your situation is the rule, or do you believe that it's the exception within the CBSA? In other words, do you think the whole organization is rotten to its core, or do you think you ended up just uncovering the one corrupt kind of situation that was happening?
There's some very good people at CBSA. I can confirm that and attest it, in uniform and in civilian clothing. But based on what I've seen, what I've reported, most of the things that I've seen right now and in various units I attended were done by people in position of authority.
Right.
From supervisor to director general. The other small things were done by regular staff, but there is definitely things that are happening in there that are criminal. To what extent it is and why it's not being investigated is not a mystery. I think it's because they don't want to admit to it. And it is a cause of concern for safety. It has impact on everything, like I testified in the past, because everybody relies on the information that is in the system. I will share with you something that is not very known, but I brought to the attention of management in 2008 or 9 that I was being approached by an individual wanting me to verify information on passports for illegitimate reasons. It was not valid, the reasons they wanted, and I refused. I brought that to the attention of management, and they scrubbed it under the rug. That person continued to come and see me and ask me for that. So at that point, I put on a different approach, and I basically told the person, who's forcing you to do that? So the person broke down in tears and explained to me the reason why. I reached out to an RCMP officer. This is new. Nobody knows about this. It's live today. I reached out to an RCMP officer and a specialized investigator, CBSA, and they decided to take on the case. And that person, I don't know where happened with her. I never saw her again, that employee. And I can't go into detail because I don't know if there was an ongoing investigation. But what she said to me that day and what I had brought to the attention of management, the management that's there should be charged with gross negligence on that. And that for not investigating it further. And I think that what's happening at the agency is they don't want to investigate anything because they're afraid that they're going to lose the power. It's going to reflect negatively on them, and it's opening the door for more corruption. We have officers that have been arrested in the recent years for accessing database and furnishing information to people of organized crime. We had officers that have been arrested out west for associating with organized crime. Those are things that you're not hearing in the media because it's being kept low profile. It's a measure of control, but at the same time, it doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't fix the problem. And it's very scary because people like me who enter information in a database, and that database is accessed by the wrong people. And if I report things that I see that are dangerous and they're not actioning on it, there's consequence to everything. And that 400,000 passports that came in, the people that were intercepted at border is probably individuals that came in with those valid passports.
Canada's passport strength has been declining recently, dropping to 7th place on the Henley Passport Index. Do you think the use of Canadian travel documents by international criminal organizations and terror groups has played a role in this decline? So are other countries beginning to see Canada as having a serious security problem?
Yes, there's no doubt that other countries have definitely seen that we have a security problem. This is no longer a hidden secret. Some of them have been expressing concern for a while. I can attest to that. In the work that I did, I saw it, and I was involved in conversation with regards to that. What I can share with you is that the misuse of Canadian travel documents by international criminal organization and terror group could contribute to such a decline. And one example that a decline on the index, but I'm not an expert at this. There's other factors that could contribute to a decline, but one thing that comes in mind is in 2012 is the RCMP arrested a man in Gatineau, Quebec. He was issuing passports under false name to some of Canada's most notorious criminal. He was aiding high-level cocaine traffickers across Canada, out west and east, obtaining fake passport, and he was facilitating the obtention of the Canadian passport in exchange for money from $5,000 to $20,000 per passport. In that situation that occurred in 2012, 2 passports were detected to have been issued to a murder suspect, also involved in high trafficking of cocaine. And I can tell you, having dealt with that individual myself, he was directly related to the Mexican cartels. The level of exploitation of this that had gone on for years before it was detected is a testament to probably complacency, and placing everybody at risk. And I question if our members of management were ever made aware of this, who withheld that information from them? Why is it that they always have to come public first before something is done? Very concerning.
In the coming week or so, actually about 10 days, President Trump will be appointed as the acting president of the United States. And one of the things that he's been threatening is 25% tariffs on Canada due to our, say, border insecurity. And again, it's hard not to acknowledge that as a legitimate problem with now over double the amount of terrorists being apprehended at the northern border as they are at the southern border. So again, the Canadian border is now the preferred route of access to America for some of these organizations rather than the southern border, which says a lot. And in response to that, our government announced that they were going to invest roughly $1 billion into border security, such as more drones and helicopters and such. So in your estimation, does giving more resources to the CBSA even start to deal with that problem that Trump is highlighting for those 25% tariffs? Or are you simply just giving more resources to a corrupt institution that doesn't really care to deal with the problem in the first place?
His answer
the
is
$1
very
billion
interesting.
is an improvement that our officers need to do their job. Now, at that point, will that money really be used and dedicated to the officers to do their job? That's a different story. But the core of the issue is the administrative bureaucracy with the current management that's in place. And the lack of accountability with the agency at every level. The corruption factor is a big issue, compiled with the lowering of visa, especially when people are landing here. Now, you can put $1 billion in detection to prevent people from going to the United States, but we're still allowing them to land here undetected.
Right. So you're patrolling the border, but they're still here with those passports.
People,
right?
keep in mind one thing. I'm in the best place to explain this, okay? Because I know. So the people that were caught at the border, they didn't come from the States in Quebec and say, we don't like it here, we're going back in the States. They were already here. They landed here undetected by means of probably using, and I have to say the word probably, even though I know better, probably using all these passports that were undetected. Now, our government was warned of this, and I'll tell you why. Many years ago, they cut down on a large amount of numbers of officers. to replace them with automated booths where the people go and on a voluntary basis scan their passport, like at the airports. And you have one officer in one area, and if something happens with the passport, then he'll go there and do his job and refer person secondary. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert how it goes and operate at a port of entry in an airport. But when you have a passport that is not entered in the database by me or Mr. Steiner that's been stolen overseas, well, you use that passport, you land at the airport, you put it in the machine, it doesn't detect anything. So we're on open door, you know. So you can put $1 billion at the border to enforce the security to prevent the people that are there, but if they're still landing here, we're stuck with them.
So in your opinion, do you think that a change of government, a change of, you know, top-down leadership, conservative government over liberals, which is what we're likely to see this coming year, do you feel like they're going to be able to affect change, or is it such a massive moving arm that is almost beyond the current political the sitting political administration? Will they be able to change much, I guess?
And this is the scary part of what he has to say.
This is my real question. If it's conservative government over liberal.
No, I testified to that, and I made it clear to the members of parliament when I testified that you can have a new government. Let's say that Mr. Poilievre becomes the next prime minister. It's not going to change anything unless they give us protection for the people like me who are speaking out and saying there's problem and we're being destroyed. There's an embedded culture, and especially in operational environment where a law enforcement environment, there's some people that don't belong there, and it's everything about numbers, and it won't change a thing. It won't change a thing at every level. It won't change a thing because they're not verifying the people that we're pointing the fingers at. There's no investigation, and there's no oversight watchdog to verify everything they're doing.
So this is troubling though. So if you think about this from a constituent's perspective, or like a voter or anybody in Canada, you know, you vote for your party to win. You know, let's in this case say the federal party, because the federal party now controls the CBSA. But if the federal party can't do anything to affect change, how do we fix this problem? Because that's very significant. Because you know what I mean, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow.
An oversight committee, a watchdog for the agency, and the president of the agency no longer has access and control over any investigation. That's the first thing. You remove their, and I testified in Parliament because of what I know, what I've seen, some things that I can't even tell publicly because I've been threatened with jail time. And I've made sure to my members of Parliament that they know that the agency only gives them what they want the members of Parliament to see.
Wow.
It's as simple as that. So what they need to do is remove every government department and agency the right to self-investigation, influence over any investigation in any way, shape, or form, have an independent third party, and have the Auditor General audited CBSA at every level of everything they do, very frequent, to make sure, and to verify the work that they do, to make sure they're doing the resource at the right place, and that any discrepancy that is reported is investigated thoroughly, because right now the new government in place can do whatever they want. It won't change a thing because there's an embedded culture and there's not much we can do.
So it sounds like, this may be the wrong term to use, but I think it's relatable. It almost sounds like a small version of our own little deep state, where there's an organization that's acting above and beyond our government, and they're basically there to report on themselves. They collect their own intelligence, they deal with their own investigations, then they just kind of say whatever they want to say to Parliament, and they go about their business. And what's crazy to me is the border is really our first and most significant line of defense. So it's the most corruptible. It's also a massive organization, and you've got organizations around the world working and doing apparently a very good job of corrupting these individuals. So it's, I mean, how would you weigh in on that? Would you sort of agree that it's almost acting as kind of a Canadian deep state, or part of a Canadian deep state?
It looks like that. The longer I work there, the longer I start to be very concerned for my safety, because myself and a few other colleagues that came forward, I wasn't alone. There was other 4 or 5 colleagues. I'm concerned for my safety because at that point you don't know just how deep the rot goes. Okay, and it seems that the people that are in position of authority believe that they could do anything they want and get away with it. And what I said to the members of parliament, and I don't want to get away from the question you asked. I'm trying to clarify, to show you just how bad the situation is.
Yeah.
I said to the members of parliament in a closed room that what I repeated earlier, CBSA only tells you what they want you to know. Second of all, what members of parliament are not always aware of is a short while before there was members of CBSA that were asked to go and testify in front of Parliament for an investigation committee of some sort. I can't remember. The person that is sitting representing CBSA in front of the members of Parliament basically is misleading them. He shows up there with a CBSA in uniform with all the bars on his shoulder only because he's a director general. He's never worked in the field before, never earned that uniform, and previously to working there was working at the Privy Council. And now he's given a job. He probably got brief, and he's misleading the members of parliament when he's talking to them. And I say misleading, and I'm trying to use a word that is with the intention to say that by the uniform he's wearing, the members of parliament are thinking that this guy is a 25-year career CBSA or custom officer, that when he gives them the information that it's based on knowledge and experience of years of experience, when in fact this guy is a bureaucrat, was working at pre-CO, and never worked in the field before. He's got a bunch of diplomas, and he's got probably speak 4 or 5 language, very good on a resume, but he's never worked in the field. He's never been in an immigration case like I did. He's never arrested someone like I did. He never worked in inland enforcement, nothing. So the members of parliament are thinking that this guy is, the final answer, and that it's clear. And then when he leaves, everything is fine. And no, this is wrong. This is wrong, and it has to stop.
So how many people do you assume are, say, waiting in the shadows in a similar position to you that would want to come forward? Like, again, we touched on it earlier briefly, like whether you're the exception or the rule, but just to share a personal anecdote that kind of leans towards what I'm thinking here is I had it happen to me at a workplace once where management found out some of the opinions and things that I said, led a crusade against me, and it led to me having to leave the workplace. But what I found afterwards was there was a bunch of people, like the majority of the people would come up to me afterwards and say, hey, I think what happened to you was wrong. I actually even agree with a lot of what you say. They would say that to other colleagues in private but never say on the record. But it's because they didn't want to face those consequences, say the consequences you're facing, which is the pressure or from management and such. So like how many of yous are there in this CBSA that say, no, there is a rampant problem happening right now, but that just won't come forward because they don't want to bear those consequences? And what would need to be put in place in order for those people to, say, feel comfortable coming forward?
There's a large amount of people that have either quit the agency, moved on from the simple clerk to director generals. I know that for a fact. And they've stayed with the agency in a very short time. When they saw what was going on, they left. The ones that were stuck like me, when they quit and they found out that I testified in Parliament, as I testified in Sam Cooper's podcast, and that the members of Parliament also have in their possession the evidence that I gave them, people all the way to the manager level and director level have written to me and say, if there's an investigation in such and such people, we are ready to testify for you in Parliament or the police on your behalf. So there's a large amount of people. People are very afraid. And I know that I was the stepping stone for the CBSA to set an example for everybody else in CBSA, because I'm the only one that that stood tall and fought and exposed these things, because I believe that there can't be two systems of justice. And when the situation that I refer to as corruption goes all the way to the highest ranking people in the agency, and that they believe that they're not obligated to follow the rule of law, then this has to be exposed. So there's a lot of us, and I was an example for a lot of people, and the things that were said to me by the management and direction there clearly indicates that they want to control and eliminate people that are there. My case, because I went very deep in the things I expose, became very dangerous for me, and other people are very afraid of the agency, and there's no recourse for us. There is no protection for us, and the members of Parliament are not listening to our call for assistance, and we have no way to deliver their programs that they're asking us to deliver because we have no protection. I got a call from a young man that was working at headquarters, because I occupied the position of union representative for a long time for the Custom Immigration Union. The young man was working for a director at CBSA, and he said that he came across things that were bothering him, and that he was being harassed. He didn't want to go into detail, and he said he needed help. He wanted to talk, but not at the agency. He wanted to talk somewhere else. And he said, "I got to let you go." He's coming in. He closed the phone. A few days later, I was informed that a gentleman at CBSA had killed himself. He had hanged himself in a closet. And this was never further investigated. His family probably doesn't even know that this young man was being harassed, and somebody got away with murder.
That is wild.
And we had 2 more officers that committed suicide. And there's no doubt in my mind that if an independent investigation had been done on the uniform officers that committed suicide with their weapons in the last few years, an independent investigation, not the RCMP. Let's make it clear, not the RCMP. Somebody like the Special Investigation Unit of Ontario. I think we'd probably find different things. That's all I can tell you.
Well, man, that's real heavy. But one of the things you just mentioned there is that you wouldn't trust the RCMP to conduct such an investigation. Now, why is that? Is the RCMP corrupted in its own right, or is, say, some of the corruption tethered between the CBSA and the RCMP? So, for instance, certain individuals or groups having, I guess, what would you call it? Cross-contamination between the two.
I have, just to make it clear, I have a lot of respect and love for the officers that wear uniform in the RCMP that are working hard to protect us. Make no mistake about that. But the brass at the RCMP and the people they control at RCMP, they're investigators. The political aspect plays a big role on what they investigate or not. In my case, when I went to the RCMP, I gave them a report on the things that were occurring, some of the things that were occurring in my unit, in addition to the destruction of passport. Things that were exchanged verbally between me and one of the detectives, I picked up on, and I stopped telling him things. They issued a letter to me saying that the National Investigation Unit, what I reported about the destruction of passport, didn't fall under their mandate, and they were not going to investigate further. Who is the person in charge of overseeing the RCMP? Well, it's the Minister of Public Safety. Who is CBSA under? Minister of Public Safety.
Right.
At that time, when I reported what I wanted to report, not what I wanted, but what I reported to them, the RCMP did not pursue it. The commissioner that was there, I never received a call from detective or the commissioner or anything like that. Now, you kind of wonder, when something of this magnitude, why the RCMP is not investigating this further. CBSA issues a statement that they investigated this thoroughly and independently with the RCMP, but yet the RCMP gives me a letter, and to my lawyers and member of parliament, they never investigated it. And I know that the officers in that room that day were, the more I talked, they were not very comfortable with that. They were professional, I will admit that, but they were not comfortable with that. And one of them said something to me that made me stop speaking more. So no, I don't have any trust in them anymore. I would never trust, and I don't recommend any public servant presently without any protection by the law that comes across something like I did to go to the RCMP. Not right now.
It's interesting.
And it's very sad.
It's interesting sort of piecing this together as you're telling me, because on one side you've kind of got the CBSA that is, you know, doing their own investigations and not disclosing information to Parliament, right? So we kind of see that it's operating as its own kind of deep state arm. I know deep state's not right, but just for lack of a better term. But then
I see what you mean.
But then you've also got the RCMP that would be investigating anything that maybe the CBSA is doing wrong or anything that's happening in that space. So if the RCMP is still doing their job, then we have to sort of assume that there is some sort of high-level government involvement here, like that the corruption, like it's even though it may be kind of operating under this deep state, if they're getting coverage from the RCMP as well, and it's the public safety minister that's pulling those strings, then there must be people in government that really do know what's going on at up super high levels. We could be all the way to the prime minister or within his cabinet that must understand what's happening here and how these two things are connected, because they couldn't run cover with one organization for the other if they didn't fully understand. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. And it's very concerning. And I think that if we want to move forward, that the political involvement for the RCMP should be monitored. And the RCMP should have the right to, the head of the RCMP, the commissioner, should have the right to defend himself or to speak out at any point in time without fear for his job if somebody is trying to interfere with the natural course of justice. They should have the right to investigate things. Political should have no involvement in any investigation that the RCMP is doing. And even I'm not an expert at this. I really don't know how the RCMP commissioner is selected, but it should be done by people that are not government official like it's done right now. In my letter to the RCMP, there are other things aside from the passport that I divulge, and I go in specific detail about what it is. And in any other circumstances, if anybody else in the public sector, including police officers from municipal force or provincial force, would have done what I described, it's a guaranteed investigation. It's probably a guaranteed criminal record, probably jail time. And yet, when it occurs inside CBSA, it's not investigated and people are probably promoted. So we have two systems of justice, and it's unfair, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for me, for other people that are working there, for you, and everybody else, because accountability should be the first thing, priority, and people should be able to do their job and do their job with integrity. And right now, it's sending the wrong message. And everything I reported were things that as far as I'm concerned, definitely met the 100% threshold to be investigated. It was legitimate. And it was not hearsay. It was things I saw. There's ways of verifying that. And no, we're not going there. And they never did anything. So it's concerning for an agency as big as that, the RCMP, to not have done this. And I'm not the only one. Trust me. I know other people that have told me that they've dealt with things at CBSA involving reaching out to the RCMP about certain things and nothing. So what's going on?
So one thing, and I used to fall into this trap before, was that, because you hear it all the time that, say, Canadians are complacent or they're apathetic, they don't really care about these things, and I used to fall into that group. However, the more I started speaking out and the more people that I had come to me, what I realized was it's not so much that people don't care or that they aren't willing to do something about these things, is that they just don't know what they can do. So say the average citizen that's just listening to this podcast right now that is, say, completely on board, and they go, wow, this is a real big issue. Maybe they even knew some of these things beforehand. I find that our audience is quite informed. What can the average citizen do right now, whether it be, say, sending emails to MPs, senators, blah, blah, blah? Like, is there any action that the average person can take to help out with, say, your cause?
I think that the Canadian public would probably be shocked if I was allowed to testify in Parliament under immunity and tell everything I've seen and name the names of the people and everything that's going on and what was never investigated. Then they would realize the importance of protecting public servant like me and other of my colleagues and everybody else that are stuck in the government that are seeing gross mismanagement, criminal acts for various reasons. It could be benefit, organized crime, influence, everything. So what they need to do is, and I'm very sorry, but I have to say this, is that the next government in power, the Canadian public needs to start writing right now, sending emails. Every person that lives in Canada, not just Canadian public, because everybody has rights in Canada, okay? Regardless they're an honest citizen or a criminal. When I was working there, you had rights and I had an obligation to follow them. But obviously it was a different mindset inside the agency. But everybody lives in Canada needs to start bombarding their members of parliament, regardless that they're who they are, and requesting accountability. Otherwise, don't vote, because you're just using the Band-Aid approach. That's all you're doing. You're putting somebody else, but the culture stays.
Right.
The rules don't change, and the bad actors have evolved, including the people inside the government departments that they know the law, they know what they can do to people like me, and we're systematically being eliminated, and we're being used as example to make sure that nobody comes forward to the advantage of the people that are the problem. And what the members of parliament don't seem to understand is that people like me are their eyes and ears. Every member of parliament has worked really hard, regardless who they are, has worked really hard to get where they are. They have good intention, they want to deliver good programs, but they don't give people like me protection. They don't give me access when I want to tell them there's a problem with me trying to deliver your program because there's corruption, there's influence, there's lone wolves, there's these things that are happening, and it's placing national security at risk. And we're even looking at people, I even reporting people planting evidence under the people to entrap them. And nothing's being done. So how do you believe you're going to stay as long as you want in the government if you don't protect me, your internal whistleblower, to tell you that the program you're trying to ask me to deliver and the money is being mishandled and that there's corruption inside? It's people have to start sending their members of parliament email every day demanding firm commitments on protecting public servant, firm commitments from the leader of the new party saying you're not just going to get elected. You need to commit to these things, to change these things. Otherwise, your money is going to waste. Simple as that. And we are going to face our worst nightmare in the very near future, because we got off the track so bad that accountability is gone.
So, in your opinion, based on how far we've gone off track, how many fake passports there are out there, how easy it is to access Canada right now, can you give me an idea of what you think the ramifications look like for Canadians over the next few years? Like, how bad is this going to get? What are we looking at?
Well, we have a lot of people that are here that shouldn't be here. That's the first thing. Let's assume that Mr. Poilievre will be in power, and he's going to do his best to address all these issues at the same time. It won't happen overnight, that's for sure. So the Canadian public is still going to be I can't talk about the economic aspect, but security-wise, nothing's going to change overnight, and we're probably going to be stuck with a lot of problems of criminality, probably increasing, until we find out the full extent of it, and the resources are just not there. Simple as that. And it's not going to be safe for it. I know that I'm going to get probably looked at in the wrong way by some high-ranking people that want to in the government that want to silence me and prevent me from speaking out. But with the type of people that are here right now, we should be very concerned about that right now. And it's being minimized. That's what I can tell you.
All right. Well, any closing thoughts here at all, Luke? Anything you wanted to share that we didn't necessarily get to or didn't ask you ourselves that you think the listeners should know about?
Well, I think that the Canadian public in itself should pay a lot of attention to people like me and other whistleblowers that are coming forward. Unlike other whistleblowers, I was an internal whistleblower, so I never went to the media or nobody, and I got punished for it, destroyed, almost killed. And it's indicators that there's bigger things happening that are not being addressed. So they need to request firm commitments from a member of parliament, because at one point or another, whether they want to admit it or not, it's going to affect them. And too many alarms were sounded and nothing was done. So we need firm commitment from our member of parliament, and we definitely need the support of the public, because they're the one paying their taxes, and they're not getting their money for their value right now. I can assure you of that. And this podcast here, just like other Sam Cooper, were podcasts that were important for me to speak out, because some members of parliament have expressed concern for my safety, for the things I've exposed. And one of them was somebody from the Liberal government. And I asked them, was this your concern, were they for my safety from the members' organized crime? And they said no, from somebody else, because we're concerned that what you're saying is true. You've seen your evidence. You're exposing things to a level that nobody has ever been before. So I think it's important that people pay attention. And I'm very upset with the regular media. I'm not allowed to say the names, but there's a lot of journalists that could have made a difference and prevent a lot of things if they had done their job when we went to them, and they didn't. So we thank you, the independent journalists, for giving the Canadian public the right time and giving me an opportunity to expose the right thing, because the best thing that could have, what people wanted to happen to me to get rid of me, including debt, would have solved a lot of their problems. So I thank you for allowing me to speak. And I hope that the Canadian public listens to this, understands it, and the importance of supporting Bill C-290 and asking firm commitment from a member of parliament. Because right now, they can preach all they want about saving us from the bad liberals. Well, there's not too many bad liberals. There's a lot of good liberals in there. The only thing is that there's no firm commitment anywhere. So I thank you. I apologize for going too much detail.
No, that's great. We honestly thank you for coming on and sort of sharing your story and helping us, sort of inform our audience, because like Liam said, this is what our audience wants. They want to be informed about what's really going on, and it's really why we do what we do. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you. And as things move along for you, if you want to hop back on, you got more to say, you just let us know and we're here.
There's going to be a book coming out very soon that I'm writing. It's being peer reviewed right now at a later date, and it's going to be very revealing. I apologize, revealing. My French sometimes, and I can assure you that if this podcast here and everything that I've done doesn't open the eyes of people, at a later date when they start reading that, people realize the importance of protecting people like me.
Wow.
I can assure you.
We appreciate you moving the needle in the right direction here, because we don't have enough good guys in these organizations. So thank you.
Yeah, and
thank you very much.
And we'll be happy to talk to you again once that book comes out. So
thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again for joining us this evening, Luke. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome.
Well, a lot of Canadians are angry at Donald Trump, but he knows what's going on, and that's why he's using the tariffs as a leverage to get Canada to clean up its borders. That's all it is. It's leverage, and politicians need to wake up, because we have a great country, but it is really suffering now. So anyhow, I'm going to stop the stream now, and hope everybody shares this, because we need this out to the Canadian public, to the Canadian people, because they don't know. So remember, what Trump is doing is leveraging, and that's what he's doing to get these Canadian politicians, Canada in general, to clean up the borders and get rid of all these bad people.